Hi everyone. Hi everyone. This is Leo. I'm the apostle. I started working as a mailman because no other job wanted me. So I deliver letters now. That makes me an apostle. And
Ah,
I'm here today with Dr. Robert M. Price, and we are discussing something quite interesting: the theology of communism. Now, on the face of it, communism is a atheistic ideology that denies the existence of God because of the materialistic dialectic process, saying that there is nothing material, it's all sorry, there is nothing ideal, it's all material, reducible to atoms in motion, consciousness is an epiphenomena. And if you're confused, oh boy, guys, this is the basis of it. This only gets more and more convoluted as we get in.
hmm,
But man, is it fun. So, Dr. Price,
hmm.
did you live in a communist dictatorship?
Do we, you say?
No, do you? Did you ever live in a communist dictatorship?
No, no,
I did.
luckily for
I
me,
did.
no.
It was fun. I lived from 2005 to 2009 in China, which is, communist
Hmm.
dictatorship for everything. Very fun, mostly because I didn't interact with the crummy state apparatus because I was a foreigner and, you know, you do you, boo. So I kind of always had an interest in it. Always kind of had it, kind of felt bad that I had a wall put over my eyes as a youngling. Like this was at my bar mitzvah. I got bar mitzvah on the Great Wall, if you can believe
Wow.
it. Oh yeah.
Wow.
um, some bar mitzvah, by the way. That's a bar mitzvah. um, eh, yeah. So we're going to talk about the theology of communism and some of the roots, not of Marx himself, because Marx was an atheist when he wrote the Communist Manifesto. However, other people involved in the movement were actually very religious and they held on to non mainstream interpretations of religion at the time, such as Hermeticism. It's always hard to say that one. Hermeticism and Cainite Gnosticism.
Hmm.
What type of Gnosticism? That I don't know. There's like 5 millions of them, but they picked that one in particular. I did do some research on it, but I'm sure you can enlighten us. So, Dr. Price, what is Hermeticism?
Well, it comes from the well, now it's used more broadly, but historically as a sect name, it seems to come from ancient, well, at least from Hellenistic Egypt. Well, I guess that's ancient, not
Uh,
the Egypt of pharaohs, but still
yeah.
way back there. And the Hermetic, of course, comes from Hermes, and they believed, as a lot of people in those cosmopolitan syncretistic times, that the gods of the Greeks, the Egyptians, and everybody else were really the same beings with different names in different countries. And just as in Lucian Apuleius's book, The Golden Ass, or the Metamorphosis, there's this great scene of an epiphany of Isis, and she says that the Greeks know me as this, and the others know me as that, and these people know me as this. Well, that's a prime portrait of syncretism. Yeah, they're all the same thing, really, and so we can get along, which was an interesting way of avoiding interreligious hatred, I guess, and. They both, and in the course of this, they identified Hermes with Thoth, though I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. I'm
Yeah,
using
it's
old
fine.
English. Toot,
He has
whatever.
bigger things to worry about
Yeah,
than being mispronounced.
and
Trust me, nobody pronounces my name. You get used to it.
nobody.
Nobody pronounces my name properly. You get used to it. Also, guys, tell me if my mic is working, because I have a funny mic. This thing has a will of its own. It's possessed by a demon, which is
Oh,
bound
gotta
on
get rid
screwing
of
with
that.
me. It's oh yeah, demon headphones, very good.
Mm. Well, they figured, I believe they used to call Thoth the face of Ra, meaning that the ultimate God was inaccessible to mortals, but that's okay because he communicated through his spokesman, who was Thoth, the god that invented writing, et cetera, et cetera. And so he became associated with mystagogy, the Hermetic text like Poimandres, which means the shepherd of mankind. That's one of the biggies. In that he appears to, I think it's Asclepius, but somebody, Asclepius appears in a number of these texts, but he is telling the human the truth of the universe, and it sounds very Gnostic. You could even say it's non-Christian Gnosticism, and so they call him Hermes Trismegistus, thrice great Hermes, and they figured this is the revealed religion of Egypt, and whether it was ever the esoteric teaching of the religious Egyptians who just were straight mythology believers, who knows how it goes, how far it goes back, but it does seem to be Greek, really. The idea of nous, or the mind, and so on. It's kind of like Philo. And there's a great chapter in C.H. Dodd's book, The Interpretation of the Fourth Gospel, about Hermeticism and the many parallels with the Gospel of John. It's really good stuff. So Hermeticism seems to come from that, but nowadays it covers other things too, but it's always supposed to be revealed esoteric wisdom. Not with any scientific method, really. It's based on visions and revelations. Now, I know that changes on the way to Marxism and communism, but which in a way was like a kind of demythologized Hegelianism that Hegel talked to you about the thesis, synthesis, antithesis, and all that.
And by the way, do you know what they call it when the thesis and synthesis come together? It's not synthesized. They have a word. Hegelians have a very special word for it. Do you know what it is?
The Erheben.
Aufgehoben.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you remember. It's aufgehoben, which means put aside. Now, I have no idea what it means. I just like saying aufgehoben because it sounds like something you say if you sneeze. Aufgehoben.
I think it refers to the synthesis in the sense of transcending the two things that came together and into something new. But Marx, a student of Bruno Bauer, the great gospel, New Testament critic, who was an extreme radical. I love him.
Father of Roman provenance, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He said that Mark invented the Jesus character, and very fascinating, and got a soft spot for old Bauer. Well, he was
actually there are like two Bauers. There's Bruno Bauer and there's another Bauer in the mix.
Yeah, F.C. Bauer, and
not related by blood. They're not family, right?
No, because it's spelled differently with Bruno Bauer and Walter Bauer, no relation as far as I know. He was writing in the 1930s. It's B-A-U-E-R, but with Ferdinand Christian Bauer, it's just B-A-U-R. And I mean, they could be related. It's just a variant spelling of the German word for farmer. And, but Bruno Bauer didn't believe Jesus existed, and that passed on into Marxism and became the official position of the Soviet Union.
Right. So I did not know that. That's very interesting. So all of the Soviets are mythicists. So
so that's right. They that was their view. They gave it new currency, I guess, and some of their arguments, I think, were pretty good. They also flipped around the dialectic that Hegel talked about, and instead of an ideal dialectic of the absolute dialectic, it became dialectical materialism, historical forces that clashed and eventually synthesized and so on.
That's very, very Mendean, very light and dark classing together, which is another Gnostic idea that you have one thing and you have its opposite. And they come together and something else happens from it, some type of synthesis between light and dark.
Yep.
Do you see that anywhere in Gnosticism, this type of chaos, this light-dark fusion?
Well, Gnosticism says that the material world, well, some Gnostics, this is a big divide between like Egyptian and Syrian Gnosticism, or so I've read in Hans Jonas, uh, that the or maybe it's probably
That's okay. It
was it
doesn't.
Iranian? Well, no, they in Egypt, like they were one of the few ancient cultures known to us that believed that God or Ptah created the material, created the matter from which the material world was fashioned. Whereas most of the cultures we know about believed in pre-existent matter that was chaos, then shaped
Right.
into cosmos. And so you had Gnostics that were sort of on both sides of that, but some said that they're trying to explain the problem of evil. If
Right.
the gods or God were good, why the heck is the world like this? And they said, well, that's because the ultimate God did not create it. Some
Uh,
bungling functionary did, and
the
this was.
bureaucrat of the gods.
Hmm?
The bureaucrat of the gods. God damn it! Stupid headphone demon. Stupid demon headphone. It's the bureaucrat of the god. I mean, you know what they call it? What is a camel, right? A camel is a government-designed horse.
Yeah,
You know that
that's
one.
right.
Okay,
And
you know that one.
the demiurge borrowed from
Right.
Plato, a
Mm.
creator below the actual pantheon of gods. That answers to what Hume would later say that, yeah, granted, there's enough order in the world to make you really sit back and say, wow, that is astounding. You have to take note of that. But there's not enough order in the world to say that a transcendent God, such as religions describe, could have made it, because it's got an awful lot of rough spots and loose threads and things that don't work. Well, the Gnostics could explain that. Yeah, it was created by higher beings, but not the highest beings, and you see the result. And
Oh,
so the but originally, at first, this material world that the demiurge made was just a kind of, as I call it, a mud pie world. He made people, but they were just inert dummies, mannequins, homunculi. But they,
zombies.
yeah. And so that what they did, what the demiurge and his henchmen, whom he created, the archons, what they did was to steal divine light from the heavenly fullness, the pleroma. And there are a
Mm.
couple of different versions of how they got it, but they stole it and shredded it into sparks, which they embedded into the mud pie earth and humans, and that acted like a kind of self-replicating DNA, as we would say. And so Adam awoke and so forth, and that
Now, this
explains.
is Gnosticism and a lot
Mhm,
of Hermeticism, which is not Christian, but they're very much related because they're both Platon. Like, in my
mhm,
opinion, Gnosticism is just very Platonic Christianity.
mhm,
That's how I describe it, because I mean, you have all of the hallmarks of Neoplatonism on it. I mean, this is the
mhm.
Neoplatonic movement par excellence, with some steps in between and some Christian dressing to it. But that's how I would describe it. It's Neoplatonism with a Christian mythology
Yeah,
spring to it.
that's very fair a description. They Gnostics sort of personified what for Plotinus was more abstract, but he
Yeah.
did talk about a primordial one and the gradual introduction of diversity, and so it was like a kind of a multi-tiered fountain, and that being was splashing over and eventually formed the complex world we have now.
Right.
So you had oneness to the many. And
Now,
Philo sort of says that too, and he's a Middle Platonist.
oh yeah. No, that's Gnosticism. No, that's Gnosticism. Hermeticism is kind of like that, but without the Christian mythology. It's pagan.
Yeah.
However, what was Hermeticism like in the 18th and 17th century, where the Cercle Social and all of these pre-communist with Marx and pre-social Marxist socialist were about?
That I don't know. I because there were a lot of things going on. It was sort of like pre-Hitler esotericism, the Thule Society,
Oh
and
yeah.
other things. It's such a vast smorgasbord of ideas. I don't happen to know what was current in the time of the preceding the birth of communism. I bet you
Okay.
know that more.
I did some research. I mean, I tried to give it a shot. I did learn that, like you said, there was a smorgasbord in pre-Hitler, in Weimar Germany. It's a pre-Hitler Germany. Of all of these things, they had the same type of feel in France at the time. With in France and England and all of
Mm,
Eastern Western Europe, they had a lot of stuff from everywhere, the Orient and Egypt, and some of it from like far off China, which was more reasonable than you would expect and boring. Like just an example, Voltaire, who argued against Christianity, talked about how, we don't really need Christianity to have a society. Look at the Chinese. I mean, they don't have this thing, and they work very well.
yeah.
So what gives?
Mm,
He was the first Chinophile,
hmm,
somebody who likes Chinese.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're certainly right. I mean, you might argue that you do need some kind of religion, or as Peter Berger says, some sort of sacred canopy that gives a rationale for the ultimately important values of the society, perhaps a mythical rationale. Hey, this is the way God created it, so you better not start fooling with it. But nonetheless, societies do need some kind of uniting framework, which is slipping away today, seems to me.
I
And
just
I
wanted
understand why. I'm a big fan of free thinking, but I have to admit that that does ultimately seem to lessen the commonality necessary to have, well, to avoid having anomie, this intellectual war of all against all, where nobody agrees on anything and has no collective identity anymore.
Dr.
As
Price.
they,
I wanted to ask about something just real quick.
Hmm.
Going just to go back to the topic of Hermeticism just for a moment. Would you agree that Hermes and Thoth were not originally the same god?
I doubt that they were. No, I think it's too different. They're sort of um,
they play the same
homologous.
role.
They do the
Hmm.
same job in different systems, but I think that was enough for the ancients to say, well, they must be the same god.
Yeah. What's interesting is there is an ancient depiction of Hermes where he's depicted with a moon right behind his right shoulder, and that's something that we can talk about another time. That's gonna get into a
Hmm.
way off
Yeah.
topic, but just to finish up real fast, so you guys can go back to your topic, original topic. There's a Sumerian god called Tutu, and I tend to think that Tutu. Yes, I know what that sounds like. Tutu, I suspect, is the original god from which the Egyptians derived Tahuti, which is how
Uh-huh.
they pronounce Thoth.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Sounds like a Little Richard song.
but Tutu was a creator god. He was
Hmm.
a creator god. There's not much remaining. There's not much writings remaining from what was bearing his name, but he appeared to have his own pantheon, like Thoth did.
Hmm.
Um, like Thoth that commanded like 8 primordial pairs. Um, when
Oh
an
yeah, the
older,
Oko god, the eight
yeah, the
glory god of
Ogul, the
Egypt.
Ogul, yeah. Thoth, an older Egyptian text, was a creator deity.
Huh.
And then later he just was transformed into a god of literacy.
Fascinating. Wow.
Hmm.
I got to do some
Ah,
more research in that.
well, there you go. Maybe he'll pop back up sooner or later. People pop out from the ether all the time. It drives me nuts.
He's
So,
ascended into heaven.
well, let's not go nuts. Um, so I actually did some research on the origins of communism, and one of the loose ends or the breadcrumbs it led me is to get this Adam Weishaupt.
Ah,
you know what, you say it just as well as I do, because I don't speak German. I barely understand Yiddish. And that led me to Adam Weishaupt, which had his own system of theology and was the leader of the Illuminati of Bavaria. Now, because this is the internet and I mentioned the Illuminati, I have to put on my tinfoil hat, which is going to be invisible. So, one sec. One sec. Ah, good. So I have to put on my tinfoil hat. It actually looks good on me, especially like this. I mean, it keeps my hair nice and fluffy, which is good. So I put on my tinfoil hat and start speaking about the Illuminati of Bavaria and what's the dirt I gathered on them. So am I gonna be able to open up a 300-year-old mystery? Probably not, but it's gonna be fun anyways.
Yeah.
From what I gathered, the Illuminati was like a secret conglomerate gathering of people to discuss intellectual matters, including religion, that were not allowed in public by the church and the state, which at that time were kind of interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does that mean they were all doing conspiracies? Well, the Illuminati of Bavaria were actually involved in a plot to try to overthrow the existing establishment in Bavaria, and they got caught.
Mm.
That is something I did find, but their political activities are not as interesting as their ideology, and this has connections, which we'll get to later, to the French Revolution, which we'll get to later. Their ideology, it has these interesting aspects, which I found in common with Gnosticism from the last episode, which, by the way, you guys should check out and see, because this stuff is... The last episode was very good. And one part of it was that you only learned the real motives as you went up the ladder. There was a type of duplicity of what they tell you, and as you advanced, they told you the actual thing, and it was an actual thing, and it was less metaphor. I don't know if there was metaphor or less metaphor, but there was certainly a ladder of knowledge. Now, we see that in Gnosticism as well, right?
Right. Also
Right.
in the Ismaili Shiite Islam, very much so.
Can you talk about that a bit, about this whole ladder of info, like...
Yeah, they got into big trouble with other Shiites because they really believed that all the doctrines and rituals of Islam and all other religions were just stepping stones on the way to higher knowledge that revealed, by contrast, all the traditional props of religion to be no more than that. And they weren't really true in any but an instrumental way. And once you climbed up the ladder, you had no real need for that. Actually, non-dualist Hinduism said the same thing. Shankara was in trouble for the same sort of thing. He said, if you've not been enlightened as to your oneness with Brahman, then it's quite appropriate for you to pray and offer sacrifice and so on. But if you become enlightened, you'll see that all of that was, like Paul says, you're putting away childish things.
Yeah, it was like
don't need them,
training
in a
wheels.
sense, you never needed them, and there is no definable truth because it's infinite. It can't be defined. And so they were viewed as dangerous nihilists or nihilists, or however you want to say it. And Spinoza got in trouble for the
Oh,
same
yeah.
thing. So that is a kind of recurring theme. And the Sufis also, they were very similar until they sort of got forcibly straightened out and became theists again. But yeah, they all seem to head in that direction. The more enlightened, the less orthodox.
Right, and this was coming to in a time where skepticism philosophically was on the rise, with people like Hume saying, "What do you think you know?" Which is a funny way of saying it. And Kant creating it. Kant is a whole different animal altogether, and he's a big one, saying, "Well, you only know the noumenal world, and you only expose the noumenal world. It's the phenomenal world, and the noumenal world is out of your grasp, because." Don't ask me how he came to this conclusion. He just did. And he says, well, there's the world of fate, and then there's the actual world, which was, in my opinion, bizarre. But you wouldn't know a lot if you think, well, I can't know for sure. I just know how it appears, how it looks to me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And But that was seemingly the philosophy of Adam Weishaupt in part, and he also had a type of Hermetic Christianity, as we talked about before. So that's a figure you gotta. That's a type of ideology you gotta latch on to. This type of whatever you want to call it, Adam Weishaupt. So keep that in mind, Adam Weishaupt. We're gonna use this little thing. It's kind of a gun. See, this is why I don't like using this thing that much. Okay, so we're gonna use this little guy. You see this thing? I also make action. Well, I try to make models, not action figures. It's not very good. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Illuminati.
Yeah, this is the one I'm currently working on. Is an old superhero called the Scarab, an Egyptian superhero.
Oh, very nice. So this is the Illuminati from the wiki page. Enlightened groups, religious or fictional. Bavarian Illuminati, which I talked about on the Bavaria. Those two.
There's an interesting wrinkle in all this. Back in the 70s, there was it was part of the satanic panic scare where people were psychologists were creating repressed memories in their victims, their patients, claiming, "Are you sure you didn't used to meet in the basement with your parents and their satanic cult, sacrificing babies?" Come on, you remember that, don't you? And so these kids were prodded into saying, "Well, I guess so." And so you had all kinds of things of the parents being arrested and then vindicated. Well, fundamentalists made a big deal out of Adam Weishaupt and the Illuminati. They said that they were simply a coven of Satanist subversives. And again, I mean, that's the kind of thing I imagine their Orthodox opponents might have said of them by way of slander, just like the Knights Templar were slandered in absurd ways. But that survived, or at least was revived, in our own day, pretty much. And so they've become, and I doubt if anybody who's heard of the Illuminati has any idea of what the real thing was.
Yeah, the funny thing is that people often say that these guys run the Catholic Church, the Vatican, and multiple other governments. But the thing is, the Catholic
and
Church,
the post office.
The Catholic Church had these people hunted down. And that really doesn't make any sense if they're the ones supposedly in control of everything. Yeah, it just sounds just made up, all those conspiracy theories about them.
I mean, it's like
so much like the Knights Templar and their persecution. When the King of France was having trouble paying his bills, he knew that the Templars were the first bankers in Europe, and they had a huge amount of money, and so he used to borrow money from them. Well, he decided he'd just take the whole thing and accuse the Templars of being Satanists, and that they would have meetings where they would worship Baphomet, this demonic goat with wings and so forth, some kind of a demon or Satan, and as a result they killed him and so on. But the whole thing was just trumped up nonsense, because Baphomet turns out to be an old French spelling and pronunciation of Muhammad, and so what the hell they were talking about. They made it up themselves.
Oh, wow. I thought it was Bahamut.
Excuse me?
I thought it was Bahamut.
Bahamut,
the name of a god. I thought Buffett was Bahamut, the name of a god.
Well, they said it was a kind of an evil god, but apparently, I mean, in the Chanson de Roland, or however you say it, the Song of Roland, they had actually Roland, the son of Charlemagne, was killed in battle by the Basques. But by the time this epic was written, they said, "Oh no, it was the Moors, the Muslims," and they depicted a fanciful scene where the Muslims entered the battlefield carrying idols of their gods, which were
What the?
Muhammad, Apollo, and Termagant. What?
What the heck?
Obviously, they knew nothing about Islam except that they were the bad guys, and
Yeah,
it
here
seems
it
to me
is.
this was the same nonsense.
I have it highlighted on the screen so everybody can see this.
Muhammad.
While modern scholars and the Oxford English Dictionary state that the origin of the name Baphomet was a probable Old French version of Muhammad, alternative etymologies have been proposed. Yeah, that's interesting. So, Dr. Price, what happened here? Did Muhammad, like in the pre-Templar persecution days, was he transformed into a demon, and then after that, chronologically, the Knights Templar were framed as worshiping it?
Yeah, because Christians who knew a bit more about it, and who had some real idea what Muhammad taught, or what Muslims said he taught, the Christians said, "Well, this guy is the false prophet predicted in the Book of Revelation." They didn't think he was so regarded by his followers, but they thought they knew better. And yeah, he's really inspired by Satan, and it's not that big a leap to distort even that and to say, well, he was Satan. He was a demon.
What do you think about this right here? What properly was the sign of Baphomet, Figura Baphometa, which was depicted on the breast of the bust representing the creator, cannot be exactly determined. I believe it to have been the Pythagorean pentagon, Funfuct, I don't know if I pronounced that right, of health and prosperity. It is well known how holy this figure was considered, and that the Gnostics had much in common with the Pythagoreans. From the prayers which the soul shall recite according to the diagram of the Ophite worshippers, when they on their return to God and stopped by the archons, and their purity has to be examined. It appears that these serpent worshippers believed they must produce a token that they had been clean on earth. I believe that this token was also the Holy Pentagon, the sign of their initiation, symbols and symbolism in Freemasons Quarterly Magazine, 1854.
Wait, the Freemasons had the magazines?
Apparently.
Go figure.
Yeah. Some sort of pamphleteering, I guess, at least.
So it looks like he's saying that Baphomet was originally a creator god of some kind. What do you think about
that? Everyone's a creator god at this point, so.
Yeah, I have not. I'm not familiar with all the details, but I'm not sure if anybody actually worshipped Baphomet, because they just were. Apparently, this was a fictional slur created by greedy Christians who wanted their money. From what I've seen.
By the way, do you know what's my favorite conspiracy theory? That Jews control Israel. Wait. Wait, why wouldn't we? We're a majority in this country. I mean, it would be weird if we didn't.
Like American Jews?
No, Israeli Jews control Israel because it's a democratic country and we make a majority in our country. So that would be weird if we didn't. I mean, that's how democracy works, right? I don't know. There's a lot of funny conspiracy. The best conspiracies about Jews. There are in my experience in life. There are 3 conspiracies about Jews. There are the Jews are communists, the Jews are capitalists, and the best one is the Jews are both. That's the one you gotta love. It's like this and this. Like, man, what do you call it? Like Marx was a Jew, ethnically a Jew, even though he was a horrible anti-Semite, and he didn't think of himself as Jewish. And Ayn Rand, the author and capitalist advocate, was Jewish. On the other hand, you have a lot of people from all types of things that are both this and this, or maybe they just choose on their own. I don't know. That's too out there. That's just a joke. So that's Adam Weishaupt and Hermeticism and all of that and all of the Illuminati business. Don't worry, I'm gonna get this on back soon. It makes me look good. So so we had Hermeticism, we had Adam Weishoff's own type of Gnosticism, and this is interesting. A big influence on the cercle social, meaning social circle, or the socialist circle, whatever, was the Cainite Gnosticism. Did you ever hear of that?
Oh, yeah, that was one of the major types. We're told, I believe, by Origen that they used to curse Jesus ritually, which is what 1 Corinthians 12:3 apparently is referring to when it says, hey, look, you guys used to be led astray by oracles from who knows what kind of paganism, I'm paraphrasing. Well, you ought to realize now that no one says Jesus anathema, Jesus be damned, by the Holy Spirit, as if somehow there were people, oh, that saith the Holy Spirit, Jesus be damned. No, that can't be right. Nor can anyone say Jesus is Lord unless he's inspired by the Holy Spirit. What the heck? Was the Corinthian church a lunatic asylum? Well, no. Origen said, no, these Gnostics are still around today. And presumably the rationale was that Jesus was merely a human channeler for the Christ spirit or angel. Right. And therefore, if you make a big deal out of the man Jesus, you're making him into an idol, so to hell with him. It has to be that. I mean, we know these Gnostics thought that. I think Ophites and Cainites thought that. And it's hard to imagine anybody else saying it in a church. And they tended to also make all the bad guys of the Bible into good ones. Like we're hearing it from their enemies, but really Pharaoh and Judas and everybody, Cain, they were all the good guys. The serpent, he was the bringer of knowledge. He was like Prometheus, which I think, by the way, is an accurate reading of the Eden story. So they have this radical reversal. It reminds me of an odd thing in the movie Constantine, where Keanu Reeves plays John Constantine, where he gets this Satanist version of the Bible, not the Satanic Bible, which is just a 20th century fabrication, but as if there were the Bible of hell, where it covers the same sort of territory, but it's from the other side. Now you're getting their side of the story. I thought, wow, what a
so it's like, so it's like the DC edition where they have a world where all of the Justice League are bad guys and all of the
like
gallery of the Justice League. It's 3, that one. Where where there's Batman is Owlman. Because bats hunt owls, and Superman is like Ultraman, which is Uberman.
And Wonder Woman is Superwoman, who is not Diana Prince, but Lois Lane. And
it's so confused. But it's fun. And also, the Joker is a good guy, and he's the jester, and he makes jokes. But he's the most awesome one, but he dies early. I was like, oh, you just killed the person I like to see the most early. Great, thanks. Anyways, so it's kind of like that. Admitted that would be cool. Admitted that would be freaking cool, seeing the Bible from the perspective of the baddies.
And of course, the reason they bring it in is Mammon, or Mammon as they pronounce it in the movie, the son of Satan.
By the way, Mammon means funding in Hebrew. It means like finance.
Yeah, the almighty dollar.
Oh yeah, the real God, baby.
And so he in this thing is actually a demon, a son of Satan, or Lucifer, whom they call Lou. It's great. And he's leading, he's tired of waiting.
At least they didn't call him Lucy. At least they didn't call him Lucy.
Yeah, right. I love Lucifer. Da, 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 da. Yeah, that could be great. And so he's trying to move the schedule up for Armageddon, and Satan isn't ready for that yet. And Constantine tips off Satan to what his boy is doing. Well, how does he know? He's reading this Satanist Bible that has Satan winning at the end. What an idea! That yeah, there's the Bible, but suppose you hear it from the other side.
Yeah, really, it's really weird. But one thing I did find about the Cainites is that they believed, maybe this is later Cainism, or maybe it was there earlier, is that they believe that all that is natural is good.
Hmm.
And in that sense, they believe the nature is good, and that includes human nature. So human nature is righteous. And
Hmm.
everything that comes to restrict human nature, people's natural desires, whether it is religion, morality, science, culture, tradition, whatever, it's bad and should be discarded. So people should be quote unquote, liberated from all of those things. That's their idea of freedom.
Hmm.
Now, this is going to be very, very important to understanding communism later on. But for now, do you see that in the original Cainitism?
Well, that would fit the notion that the heroes of Judaism and Christianity are actually those who repress the natural urges of humanity, and a kind of well, I hesitate to compare it, but a kind of Nietzscheanism. It's saying yes to life, not no.
Yeah.
And Nietzsche thought Christianity, of course, was the sick room religion, and because of that kind of thing. Well, the Anton LaVey tribe of Satanists today, who of course don't believe in a literal devil, they're really a kind of religious humanist. They say
Yeah,
religious
which is very
ritual is
weird.
important.
Right,
And
guys.
they say exactly that lust, vengeance, all these things are natural and should not be restricted. I mean, they might say what Paul did, all things are lawful for me, though not everything is expedient. But nonetheless, they say Christianity is cowering cowardice. And it's like the victim mentality, the slave morality. And instead, you should strive for something more heroic. The Invictus poem would be a great example of that. And I don't find it that surprising that the Cainites would have said it. We're told that the Carpocratian Gnostics, as well as a sect, I think the Ajivikas in India, both independently believed that in order to finally be liberated and no longer reincarnated, a person had to do every possible act, so-called good or so-called evil. And so they tended to be libertines and not smiled upon by the Buddhists, the Jainists, or over in our neck of the woods, Clement of Alexandria. That's somewhat similar, and it's nobody doubts that. I mean, there were libertines of a kind, and apparently the Cainites were too.
Interesting.
I
So yeah,
want to show this image just real quick. I did some really awesome interviews recently. I moderated a debate between Dr. James Charles or Dr. Richard Carrier. If any of you want access to that, check it out on Patreon. YouTube members also can get early access to it as well. Professor Marcos Vincent, dating the New Testament to the 2nd century CE. And I also interviewed Scott Stripling on his discovery of the oldest known inscription of God's name that has been found that's hitting the news. So if any of you want early access to that, just get on Patreon and check it out. These all will be coming out soon, but if you guys want to see it sooner, go ahead and get it done.
This reminds me of something in one of Woody Allen's books where he has this tongue-in-cheek essay on the Dead Sea Scrolls, and he said some scholars doubt their historical authenticity because the word Oldsmobile appears in the text. And I've always remembered that. But I don't think it's actually in the new thing they found, though. So I guess
maybe. Well, we like our Oldsmobile in it. Well, we used to like our Oldsmobile in Israel because we're very popular, but I don't think the time lines up, unless you're Ralph Ellis. By the way, guys, seriously, I saw those videos. I even helped a bit on them. They're amazing. Like, seriously, guys, if I were you right now, I wouldn't wait. I would just go on the Patreon right now. Wait for this live stream to be over, go on the Patreon and just watch them because they're that good. I watched some of them 3 times, and not just for editing them, just because they were that freaking interesting.
Wow.
It's so amazing. You guys are in for a treat, and don't wait, because why? Be a libertine, like the Carapacasians. What do you call them?
Yeah, the Carpocratians or Harpocratians.
Carpocratians. And I get whatever.
I want to ask something real quick. Since Leron brought up Ralph Ellis, Dr. Price, I'm just curious.
Oh, no. What did I do?
Are you still stuck at 40 pages in King Jesus?
Yeah, because I've had to get into other stuff more urgently to prepare for interviews and so on. I'm going on at 6 o'clock tonight on Gnostic Informant to talk about Vedic mythology and Bible mythology. And then tomorrow night I got a debate on the resurrection with a Catholic friend. And so I'm kind of having a traffic jam or a log jam these days, and I don't have the time to pursue
so much Dr. Price to go around.
I want to get around them. It's certainly fascinating.
Oh no, I was just trying to be funny.
So the Carpocratians, the Gnostics, they were libertines, and they had this type of excuse. And we kind of see it with people like Rousseau and the idea of the noble savage, that somehow if we just go back to nature, if we just shed all of the trappings of society and start over anew without the sins of society and Christianity, which they hated, we can have a good life. Voltaire was you know who is Casanova?
Vaguely.
Yeah, okay, so it means romantic and serial womanizer.
It's a regular noun, yes.
No, but there was actually a guy named Casanova, and he did actually, discuss intellectual matters with basically all of the famous intellectuals of Europe. One of them being Voltaire, and he says, "Look, Voltaire, I know you don't like superstition, and you consider a lot of stuff superstition, but what do you think is going to happen when we take away superstition? What are people going to be left with?" He says, I don't know, but if we do, we're going to save people from the jaws of a beast. And you're telling me what they'll do now? He says, well, no, that doesn't work. And Casanova very much respected Voltaire and his sagacity, him knowing so much. But on this, he said, yeah, I think the guy made a mistake, because things become really bad when you give away morals and you're a libertine, which he was, which doesn't end well, ever. Ask him. He was that one. I very much recommend,
That is one of the things I embrace about Gnosticism, in that they had this supposedly elitist hierarchy of types of people. That on the top you had, I guess, the equivalent of Plato's philosopher kings who understood the way things had to be and why. And then below them you had the psychikoi, the natural ones, who were kept in line by conventional religions, even though they were laden with superstition and nonsense. And then below them you had just the dregs, who religion, philosophy meant nothing to them, and you just had to keep an eye on them and have enough jails for them if it came to that.
Or gulags.
Or
gulags.
I think that is sort of true. Like, if everybody were unbiased critical thinkers, you might not have a problem with no government, but you can forget that. You're gonna have the war of all against all if there is no sanction against certain behavior.
On the other hand, the war of all against all, we need to remember the war of all against all is the goal of communism, because they want the state to wither away and morality to wither away. Now, that's not true, because they need to have a morality, but at the end of the day, you're asking, why is that your morality? Because it works. But we'll get to that later. But this state of war against all, and everyone is like that, is the end goal of communism by the end of the day. And they claim so openly. It's the atrophy of the state into complete anarchy. So, you see, this is why communism is a mismatch of all of the ideas in the ancient world. In the Enlightenment, that were not the American Revolution, combined into one. You had anarchy at the end. You had a type of religious theocracy at one part. You had Hegelianism and Hermeticism at the other, and you had a type of atheistic science in the middle, all in one place. It's amazing how this thing synthesized all of the ideas of its time and created whatever this is. But we're going to get to that soon. I didn't want to get to touch upon the philosopher king and its role in communism, but that becomes plainly evidence when you see that in communism you have the Politburo, which are the top, and those are the guys who decide everything, and it's okay for them to lie to the populace, let alone the party cadres, the lower party cadres, and below them there's the populace, which honestly you can do whatever you want to them, and if they go out of line, send them to a gulag or to a labor camp, or if they're Uyghur minority in China, you can just send them to a concentration camp.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah.
Oh. Well,
when we said never, yeah.
When society returned to the primordial anarchy, did they think that it would all be fine because crime had been created by policing?
Unknowable, but my answer to this is that they are going to, that crime as we know it would change because the future would be so radical, we would have a different understanding of what a crime is than now. So ultimately it's unknowable, but I think the answer is yes. So
that fits esoteric Judaism too, because of the idea that Jacob Frank and Sabbatai Tzvi and others had in the 17th and 18th centuries, that once the kingdom of the Messiah came, the law would be not done away with, but transformed, perhaps by the sudden appearance of a hitherto invisible letter in the text. And now everything once forbidden was permitted or commanded. But that'd be okay, because it's the Messianic age when the evil Yetzer, the evil instinct, would have been done away with. And that's a pretty big risk, it seems to
right.
me.
You know, it's like they said, and I forgot which part of it. I think it was in Kings, and says, and there is no ruler in Israel, and the man would do as he sees fit, meaning it's total freaking anarchy. However, there is this libertines who say that, well, yeah, but that's good, because if you do what you want, that's good, because that's natural. Like the Caraparacasians, which I can't ever. Can you say it, please?
The Carpocratians, I think.
Carpocratians. Man, that sounds like a Pokemon. It just does. I mean, we have Polycarp, so you don't know what the Pokemon is, right?
Oh,
it's like Pokemon. You don't know what the Pokemon is, right?
Oh, I do. Yeah,
you do.
Big fan. Yeah.
It's very good, very good. That was like so good. It's like, I don't know what's the parallel to the ancient days of pop culture. So now that we established the esoteric base for the communistic or the socialistic movement, which is again Adam Weishaupt in his Hermeticism, Hegelian dialecticism. Wrong hand. Hegelian dialecticism. I'm confused. Hegelian dialecticism, Cainite and Carpocratian Gnosticism,
right,
and just run-of-the-mill Platonic hierarchy, whatever. Now we can get into the pre-intellectual roots of communism, and we are going to touch about Marx in the end, but that's later. So the Illuminati of Bavaria, apparently their coup failed. Oh, yeah. Their coup failed, and then it was a lot of their members apparently had influence, or somehow they got in contact with the Freemasons in the Grand Orient and the Scottish Rite Lords. Don't ask me what those are. I'm not a Mason. I don't know nothing about Masonism. I'm an atheist. I can't even join if I wanted to. And it's also the No Homer Club. You know, that's a great Simpsons episode. You should watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you remember. Great. So, God damn it. These groups try to influence, these groups, and especially influential members among them, try to influence the French Revolution, and it was kind of like the World Economic Forum, where we have the most influential people trying to piece together some type of funny ideology and talk about it. The people who said you'll own nothing and be happy, and I'm like, okay, that's weird. It was very similar in that sense. There's elites with a lot of money that don't know what to do with.
Yeah.
There's no other way
You
to say
just
it.
read my mind. That was the next thing I was going to say. We got it again right
I mean,
now.
it's freaking obvious. And we know how it ended then, but it didn't work, and it's probably not going to work now because these ideas are crap. I'm sorry, it's not very good. Then skip forward to the French Revolution and the Paris Commune, which was part of the when the Paris Commune. Now, Paris Commune comes later, but we'll get to that. So the Platonic. So in France at the time, they wanted an atheistic state, and they called it the cult of reason, which functioned exactly like its old, but was secular, but not really, and it enshrined reason as its highest. And at the time, apparently the leaders of the French Revolution wanted to radically change everything, including morality, religion. They defaced religious institutions, completely destroying them at the time. I mean, they put prostitutes as leaders of a church, which would only satisfy Mary Magdalene, and not even that, because didn't happen that way. And put animals in the barn animals in the clothes of priests. Defaced art, whatever. Try to do away with the past and what's possible. That failed miserably. Even Robespierre was like that and said, "Nah, that's too much, fam." Then Robespierre took over, made the same type of something like North Korea, where he was venerated as the supreme whatever. Very North Korean, very cult of personality, like Stalin. That didn't work out. Apparently, eventually we got Napoleon, Napoleon. Idiots didn't want a king and got an emperor. Fantastic, dumbasses. It's funny. It's funny because it didn't happen to me. Then that didn't work out. There was one individual named Badouf. You can't make this name up. His name was Badouf, and he started this thing called the Conspiracy of Equals. Didn't work out. League of Outlaws, that was the name. In the 1800s, like early 1800s, they changed their name to the League of the Just, which sounds kind of like a Justice League spinoff. Like,
Yep.
I'm sorry, I just had to say that. Justice League spinoff. They were apparently an apocalyptic Christian cult, but they weren't mainstream Christians at the time. They were more Hermeticist and the other stuff I talked about. They merged with the Communist League, which was and it was Communist League, which Marx was a part of, and the term and the idea was popularized by him. Now we get to Marx, the man of the hour. Marx apparently grew up to a guy who converted from Judaism to a type of Christianity, that, for my knowledge, placed a high emphasis on a person's work and creative endeavors during his life. I forgot which stream it was called. Marx grew up Christian. He went to study in school. He got disillusioned with religion, and at the same time, he had apocalyptic visions of religious rapture, some type of fascination with the devil. In one of his poems, I'm paraphrasing, he writes, "I got this sword from the Prince of Darkness. He gave it to me." In one place, he said, "I become destruction." Whatever, it's like angsty teenage poetry. He just has a good translator, is all. That's Marx. He somehow stumbles upon all of this. However, at the same time, you have Engels, who is studying who is in the same Hermetic league as Hegel. This is where the Hermeticism part comes in. Hegel and Marx had some disagreements, but they managed to work things out, as partnership requires compromise. And together, apparently, they synthesized all of these things I said. I mean, Cainite Gnosticism, Hermeticism, just run-of-the-mill Platonism, Christianity, the thing Marx grew under, apocalyptic Christianity, and all of this to create communism. And one of the defining features, one of the, what do you call it?
Cardinal doctrines.
No. The thing that happens when things combine that don't have it normally, like emergent properties. There we go.
Oh.
One of the emergent properties of all of these things together in communism is the idea that conflict creates order. Conflict goes forward. So if you want society to progress, you need conflict, and you don't just need any conflict. You need a type of conflict that pits people against each other in struggle. And this was actually before Herbert Spencer, sorry, and Darwin. In fact, even have letters of Engels saying, "Hey, Marx, I discovered this guy called Darwin with his survival, with his evolution stuff. It might be good for us, you know." But they already predated it by a bunch. So they had this idea that somehow conflict leads forward, and this is the hardest part to get your head around for. But when you do, things become very clear. According to the dialectical process, the way society progresses forward and you establish communism is you identify something, okay? You create its opposite, and you make them class. So make them class. And this is how communism spread. This is their MO. Now, what does that particularly mean? That means if somebody believes something, create the opposite idea of it, and force them to confront it, isolate the middle, and whichever is the most radical of them, go with that one. So it's a way of creating radicalization, and we see it in everywhere communism was tried. If a society believes in private property, like every normal society, tell them why private property is bad. If a society believes in individualism, tell them why we need critical race theory and identity politics. If a society believes in Chinese, respect your elders, filial piety, and respecting your teachers, have students educate the teachers and humiliate them in public. Holy shit! I got a story. You're not gonna believe it. So, I lived in China, and I knew one woman who, in the Cultural Revolution, her parents were professors, and they both got tortured, publicly tortured, humiliated, and killed by the party. Her brother committed suicide from the pressure, and she had mental issues till she got really traumatized. She's a party member. Now, yeah.
Wow.
Can you imagine that?
Boy, oh boy.
Yeah, it's like somebody telling me, "Oh yeah, my whole family died of Nazism." Oh shit, and I'm a member of the Nazi party. Like what the? It's that stupid. It's that stupid. But apparently, this is common in China. A lot of the sons of the former elite or landlords or whatever, they're apparently now part of the CCP.
Whoa.
And this isn't by accident, because according to this, the point of a dictatorship, the practical point of a dictatorship, is to break people's spirit. And in the Cainite, in the Carpa-Carcassian tradition, after you become, I guess, you debase yourself and liberate yourself from all of these things. I guess liberate yourself from hope, then you're saved. So here we see the I'm just gonna call it the left hand. In Kabbalah they call it the left hand because it's like the opposite of the right hand, because it's the opposite of that which is good, or that which is right, because like the thing is right now. Thing that is right. Anyways, after that happens, then you can be liberated of tradition, liberated of hope, liberated of all of these things. And it reminds me of something when there was a famine after the Soviet Revolution. Lenin said, "This is good." And he said, "Why is this good? Will it hurt our enemies?" He said, "No, because people will lose faith in God after the famine." That's part of the Black Book of Communism. Do you remember that bit?
The Black Book of Communism?
Yeah, it's all of the people killed by communism.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah. So that's part of it. This is where the religious side or the theological ideas of, I'm not going to call it Satanism because that's going to make Satanists look bad. Of this idea, no, really, this idea of the opposite of what is, it's the opposite to be the opposite, so to speak. And doing the opposite for the sake of the opposite, like Gnosticism or whatever. it's hard to describe, but I'm just going to call it that now. I think there was a better term for it, which I hope you can help me find. This is the application of that religious idea in practice, as we can see in I don't know, critical race, or I don't know, identity politics, if a society is individualistic, or against or abolishing private property in a capitalistic society, or disassociating filial piety, or destroying religion. In a big sense, it's destruction for the sake of destruction and power, which go hand in hand. But in a theological sense, you have the type of going back to nature that you see in Rousseau and the Cynics and the Canaanite Gnostics and the Canaanite Gnostics. Honestly, as far as I'm concerned, Marxism is a combination of all of the awful theological ideas of the time. What do you think?
Yeah, that really is the shadow side coming to the fore. It's kind of like Gilles de Rais, the historical Bluebeard, who said, "Evil be thou my good."
It's very similar because you have the synthesis, and this is the antithesis, that thing, opposite. And then they come together. So if you have the good, and if you have one thing and you have the antithesis, because remember, at the end of the day, communism it's very nihilistic because it doesn't have a code of values.
Right.
Its code of values is designed to kind of destroy, kind of latch on. It's kind of like, the parasites in sci-fi. It latches onto your code of values and tries to distort it.
Yeah,
while
that's clearly what's happening today.
While still being altruistic, I do think you can say it's truly altruistic because it demands sacrifice. It doesn't demand benevolence, which are not the same thing. I mean, they demand sacrifice, but it's sacrifice for the sake of sacrifice. It's not even sacrifice for heaven. It's sacrifice for an utopia in the future.
Yeah.
But even that is my idea of the theology. That is my current understanding, enlightened by your comments on these religious groups on the theology of communism.
Fascinating. I've learned a lot here today.
I learned a lot too. Well, what do you think? Is there something? Are there any connections you think could be made more, or anything that are just not right, or?
I think it's a pretty solid thesis, and I admit my knowledge of some of the particulars is pretty limited, but it sounds real good to me. I mean, it seems to fit what is happening and why.
Yes. I can't take credit for this theory. I got it from reporter Joshua Phillips. He's a reporter for Epoch Times. Ever heard of him? No. I got it from Joshua Phillips, who had his own research into this. I don't know if it's, which is why I wanted to check it out and ask an expert on the subject. So far, what you said about the Carapacasians and the, God damn it, those guys, those guys I can't pronounce. That's their new name. And the Canaanites and the Hermeticists are there. Just a final question: is there any other place in religion? Where you see somebody trying to find the opposite of something, saying that no, evil and good are as important as each other, and we combine them, and that's how divinity happens. Is there any place like that?
Well, it seems to me Tantric Hinduism and Buddhism are sort of like that. They're trying to undo the primordial union between in Hinduism, Shiva and Kali, and in Buddhism, the Vajra and the Garbha elements, like the penis and vagina of the universe. But that's what gave rise to the universe of multiplicity. And in order to reverse that, at least in your own mind, that is to escape the illusory cosmos thus created, you must take the left-handed path, as you're saying, and do the five. You embrace the five forbidden substances: meat, beans, fish, alcohol, and sex with somebody not your spouse. And if you do these things in the mood of mere witness, you do not, which is a pretty tough tightrope to walk, you then finally withhold ejaculation at the end, and this brings you back to the point of creation, and for you it's undone, and the world as we know it is over. I did a horror story premised on that, but that is a type of tantric mysticism, and needless to say it's pretty controversial even over there. And I love this line that comes out, I think, from a Hindu tantra. It says, by the same acts that cause some men to boil in hell for 100,000 eons, the yogi gains his eternal salvation. Well, that's was pretty negative, and the left-handed path and so on.
It's
And
kind
that's
of yeah, I'd call it a salvation through evil, or I guess a salvation through blowing good and evil, which is a Gnostic. I think I heard that Gnostic idea before. Did you hear about it?
What's the name of the phrase?
A salvation through evil.
Yes, and Jacob Frank, the successor of Sabbatai Tzvi, talked about that. Redemption through sin. Gershom Scholem has some really interesting stuff about that.
What the heck is a salvation through sin? How would that is that's like newspeak? That's like Pieces War, Truth is Lie. What the?
It refers to the fact that outwardly the world does not look like the messianic kingdom, but we on the inside know that in fact it has appeared, but so far in secret. And that means that the Torah of negation and forbidding is over, but only for us who know this from the inside. And so secretly, we can have meetings where we have sexual encounters we're not supposed to have. We eat food that's not kosher, because for us, all the prohibitions in the Torah have become commandments. And so this, for others, it would be sin, but not for us, because we exist in a kind of a bubble of the Messianic age already. And one day this will break forth and everybody will see it. Every eye will see it. But until then, it's like the parable of the mustard seed in the gospel. It's so tiny. Most people can't even see it, but just give it time. Eventually, it will expand into a great plant in which birds can build their nests and all that. And so that Scholem talks about that as redemption through sin.
That's quite something. It does feel like the line from Animal Farms: "Everyone is equal. Some are more equal than others."
Yeah.
That's kind of feels like that.
They couldn't keep this all that secret, and so there was all kinds of awful persecution and betrayal and so on. But his book, The Messianic Idea in Judaism, has a chapter on that, and his Major Trends in Jewish Mysticism has at least one lecture on these movements. And then he did this huge cinder block of a biography of the libertine Messiah, Sabbatai Tzvi, called Sabbatai Tzvi, the Mystical Messiah, and they're all just really fascinating.
Sounds like a hand, like how you say in American, a hand and a half full, a handful and a half. Did I say that right? I'd say I said right.
I'm going to have to get going. I have to run an errand before the bank closes here. But maybe we can pursue this at greater length once
Dr.
I do
Price,
more research.
Dr. Price, just if you don't want to run to the bank, just seize the means of production and the means of finance, and you wouldn't have to do it. I mean, that's the whole point of this. You don't need to run to the bank. You just need to seize the means of production. So go rob a bank.
Hallelujah.
I mean that's a joke, but it just shows you how depraved this thing is. I mean, you could justify theft by saying, "Oh no, those guys are evil," blah 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 blah. It's okay. So yeah, we're gonna have to talk about this again after we both do some research.
Yeah.
I have no idea even where to look, so we're gonna have to help me out with that. This is kind of dense stuff because you're dealing with history, philosophy, and theology.
Mm-hmm.
I know historians who are into theology. I know theologians who are into philosophy. I know philosophers who are into history. I don't know a lot of people who do all three.
Yeah, and you have to do that. These things all bear on each other. Like Van Harvey says in his book, The Historian and the Believer, history is a field-encompassing field. You can't just narrow it down.
I like that. It's a field-encompassing field. It's
well,
it's like
I got to get going, or I won't make it. But let's soon do this again, and I'll know a little bit more about the Illuminati and so on.
I don't even know if the Illuminati. I mean, this rabbit hole goes so deep. You have so many groups where you don't know, and you go to the Knights, like we did. We went to the Knights Templar and like Baphomet. No, that was Muhammad. They just wanted to get they just wanted to get money from them. And okay, that's I mean, there's a lot of dead ends in this stuff because I mean, it's all right. Very, very fun talking with you. I'm gonna stay on.
Too. Yeah, it's great to know you. I'm glad to have made your acquaintance.
Oh, same here. Very much.
Very much.
Hello, viewers. Thanks for watching this video from the History Valley YouTube channel. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And if any of you wish to further support this channel, please consider checking out this channel's Patreon page and becoming a patron, and or donate through PayPal or through Super Chat during a live stream. Thank you.